The idea came together in part because we were talking, we were a group of people who were talking, meeting on Zoom and having these kinds of conversations around chatbots.
To put together where potentially what our future looks like, what the next generation's future looks like, which is very, very, going to be very, very different.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show. You are with us for our 1-year anniversary. We have been doing this literally for an entire year. 262 shows. This is our 263rd show. With me, I have Jyunmi, Brian, Andy, and Eran. And I think this is going to be it. Karl can't make it, and we'll see if anybody else drops in. But I want to say that Karl, I'm lying. Karl can make it, and there is Karl. Thank you.
Wow.
And Robert is our 7th co-host, and we don't know if he'll come today, but he definitely was part of the beginning with us. So we want to make sure to say his name today as well. What we're going to do today is talk a little bit about like the dominant memories that we have as a cast, as co-hosts, and a little bit about what we're thinking about moving forward. You'll see some more stuff come from us. But Andy, it was your idea to sort of like reminisce about the shows that stand out for you. Do you? Sorry. Yes. And the people in the comments who have been with us kind of ride or die for a while now. So Jude, Cisco, Jen is laughing that we don't have birthday hats. No, we don't. And Justin and Jen, thanks so much. Andy, what's your dominant memory? What's your big?
So just to clarify, I'm not going to try to remember the actual shows. There's 200 and some odd.
Right.
So I can't do that. But I wanted to hit the highlights of the past year and the things that were intellectually intriguing to me, the developments that I think caught our attention and became the subject of discussion, not only on our show, but broadly in the world of AI. So rewinding back to September and October of last year, the first thing that really, I think, added some magic to it was the release of Chat GPT Vision in early October. And I'm jumping, I'm not going to go week by week here, obviously, because it's a big span of time. But multimodal AI, the idea of being able to upload files and images and the profound capabilities of the LLMs to do things with those images was really fascinating. And then immediately following that, we got all of us involved in the Sam Altman dismissal and reinstatement drama. Okay, now that took everybody's attention for a long time. And it actually didn't take all that much time because it happened, seemed like OpenAI was imploding, and then it seemed like it had reconstituted, and there were big issues around the ethics of AI and alignment for AI and whether OpenAI was truly open and pursuing beneficial AI. And then things settled out because in almost about the same time, OpenAI announced custom GPTs. And custom GPTs were really a major milestone and change in the way we worked with AI. Changed from you're in a session, you're on a browser, you're talking to the AI, and you're putting your prompt in there, you're copying your prompts over to a prompt library. And what custom GPTs did was it created a kind of a thing like prompt gramming. You're programming a purposeful assistant that's shareable with others. And that, I think, changed the game for me personally, and I think for many of us, and a lot of us on this show got involved in building custom GPTs for a while. Now that's toward the end, maybe the holidays passed by without a lot of hullabaloo. But then at CES in January, and in and about the first part of the year 2024, there was the emergence of these magical visions of wearable or portable devices that could learn about you in real time or learn by looking at your screen and repeat or control your computer, and then the subsequent flops of those early visionary attempts. So Rabbit was announced at CES in the first week of January. Everybody was very excited by that really incredible demonstration. At Humane Pin was announced, and it was promising to be a totally new and sort of Apple-like form factor. Open Interpreter Lite came out a little later in March, and I know Beth and I at least immediately bought one online, and I'd never heard a thing from them again. So it's and Humane kind of flopped. It was really a poor performance. Rabbit is to some degree, it's a paperweight on my desk now, superseded by capabilities of other systems. Okay, another thing is the promise of agents. So in 2024, we've said on the show, this is like the year of agents, and that promise is yet unfulfilled in practice. But the promise is really of a fire and forget goal seeker agent that can perform beyond the current session where you're interactively prompting a large language model. So in addition to that sort of fire and forget capability and goal seeking, there's this ability of large LLMs just through prompting to be divided into callable experts in the mixture of experts model by a directive orchestrator agent within that LLM. And that can all be done with this process called meta-prompting. It doesn't require a special agentic LLM. You can actually make an LLM do agent-like things within itself. And that's really intellectually intriguing to me. So I wanted to mention that. The next thing in the timeline for me, and I just have 3 remaining, is the Sakana AI merging of open source models in an evolutionary process, which made it possible to create a frontier-like capable model with very bespoke kind of capabilities just by doing this process of merging the weights of 2 different models, not retraining the model, just merging the weights mathematically. And that created a new model. And then they developed an evolutionary chain of these merges, with the winners of those merges surviving as the fittest and going on to become a really, really capable model. That's a fascinating process and gives a hint to how AI is going to advance beyond just the application of more and more massive compute training, because there are other ways to address the advancement towards AGI and the development of advanced reasoning. Okay, 2 last things. One is the development of small models with really substantial capabilities and the promise of local, mobile, personal private assistance on your phone, on your computer desktop. And it's proven now that you can take the training of a large language model and compress it into a much, much smaller model that can fit on a single GPU and run on a single GPU and present better than 80% of the capabilities of the large language model with trillions of parameters. Finally, very recently, there were the OpenAI and Google demo days that came out and demonstrated the advanced voice modes that are now going to be changing the game again, from you sitting in front of your terminal and typing in prompts or refining prompts to you having a really active, potentially empathic, and just delightful experience talking to an intelligence. And that I haven't yet had the experience of doing that, although Pi was an early demonstrator of that kind of empathic voice interaction. And so we have to give kudos to Pi in this past year. That whole that company Inflection has been acqui-hired, and so it doesn't really operate as an independent entity anymore. But advanced voice mode is going to be something fascinating. That's my wrap up for the year and our full birthday. And I turn it over to the next.
Awesome. So one of the things that I want to say is that while you don't have it, and neither do I for advanced voice mode, Karl and Brian do have advanced voice mode. And I'm looking at Eran and Jyunmi and remembering that you're Android people, so no. That's not going to happen right away for you. Terribly sorry. Andy and I are the others who are waiting. Who wants to jump in now?
I'll hop in real quick. I appreciate Andy going through the extensive year in review. Though he stole one of my highlights.
Sorry.
So I'm going to keep it condensed. So essentially, yeah, we have so much content that we've gone over and created, and it's been a fantastic ride. But I wanted to highlight, maybe since we highlighted episodes 100, 200, and of course the 1 year anniversary, I figured I'd take an episode that stood out to me from each of those eras, if you will. And so in the sub 100 episode, and it was funny because I actually didn't remember this until I was going through for a review and things like that, but it was, who's at your table? The AI conversations with anyone in history. That was episode 52. And I think what stood out to me most about this episode is this is where we first discussed how we could speak to AI versions of past people. And that ranges from historical figures, and then we got really in-depth into a discussion about on the more personal nature, about creating AI avatars of, our loved ones who have passed and things like that. And we had some, great stories from Brian and Andy on that. And I know when we were first talking about the concept, I think this is the first time that we really dove into the idea of AI could potentially create a fairly solid representation of this person if we feed enough examples and data into them to fine tune what that avatar was. And that was one of those eye-opening conversations that we had. It's like, really gets you thinking, because I remember, after looking over, it's like, oh yeah, I really thought about I really thought about who I would want at my table. And there was of course some famous historical figures, then some personal favorites of mine, like actors that I really loved, and some of the roles, and I'd love to talk to them about that kind of stuff. But it really expanded the thinking in that space for me.
And actually, that's another great lens of looking at what's happened in AI over the last year. Because when we were talking about it, if I remember, Brian was saying that he had some recordings of his mom's voice. Is that right? But did he have enough? Right? Because maybe you needed a longer recording to be able to really capture it. And now you don't need a really long recording, right?
Like 5 seconds now with some of the newest models out there.
Let's go even farther with that and say that in the future, I might be able to put in parameters that capture not only my mom's voice, which would be one thing, but also enough parameters about where she grew up, maybe micro environments that she was in, Flatbush Avenue inside of Brooklyn. That's where she had some of her formative years, as well as mixed in, obviously my family, well, not obviously, but my family lived in Georgia. And so there was a bit of a fish out of the water for many, many years, being like sort of this New York family down in Georgia from 87 on. So I think there's going to be, here's the thing. I think we're limiting if we think, oh, it'll just be able to mimic her voice. Perhaps, I think in the future, I don't know how far, but it'll actually be much more delicate and intricate than that, where I'm able to input experiences and things that maybe my mom did, or maybe the high schools and stuff like that. And all these parameters will go in to create the best representation we can of my mom. Now, will it always sound like my mom? I'm not quite sure, and will that be enough for me? I don't know that either. Will it be comforting to some and not others? Will cross the uncanny valley? I don't know. I don't know any of that. But what I will tell you, just as a quick pivot, 2-3 nights ago, it's weird. It's all mumbled now. But in London, one of the very last things we did, sort of on the recommendation of Karl by way of a friend of his, is we went and saw this ABBA experience in London. And it's, if you don't know, it's the band ABBA, but it's virtual avatars of them playing live on stage. And there are points where you cannot tell it is not them standing on the stage 100 feet from you. It's pretty impressive. Now there's tells, and it doesn't quite follow the uncanny valley, but when you see it and you go, this is what money can accomplish, it's very eye-opening. And I will say that should give everybody hope for what the future is, because let's just assume that's the upper level of what can be reproduced. Now, these people still exist, and yes, in their case, there's probably lots of archival footage because they look like they did in the 1970s. They mentioned the fact that the last show they played was Wembley in 1979 in London, and you're looking at them in their period piece costumes. So I just went to an experience where I stood and watched a virtual band and sang along with, and everybody had a great time, by the way, to a live orchestra with a virtual ABBA band playing through the songs, and everybody had a good time, singing and dancing the whole way through. So when you see something like that and you go, okay, that's where the money can take you. Where does that trickle down? What does that mean for the rest of us? And that's 2024. What does 2030, 2035, 2040 truly look like? And my guess is that for those kind of conversations, you're right, Jyunmi, that was one of our really fun conversations because it just kind of went where it went. It'll be very interesting to see, but I do not think we should limit ourselves to voice and just replicating voice. I think it's going to go so much deeper than that. And you'll have thousands of parameters if you choose that you can ingest into there. Same with historical figures. Like you were saying, Jyunmi, like maybe some of your favorite people. If somebody wants to talk to Abraham Lincoln, yeah, we can make it sound like Abraham Lincoln, but can we put in 1,000 variables to get the essence of Abraham Lincoln and how he might have thought about certain discussions and topics at the time? I think that will be very, very interesting to see.
Yeah, let me just comment that imagine that the most advanced biographers in academia or just, authors who know the most about Abraham Lincoln or some other historical figure take it upon themselves to build the model of who that person was, as they do in writing now. But that's a hard thing to digest. And imagine if that's all interactive.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. And luckily, historical figures from that time, it was really in trend to write letters. So so that I think that'll be the great basis. We have data from that time period. So I think that'll be fantastic. All right. Well, let me wrap up with my last two here. So between episodes 100 and 200, of course, we've tons of fantastic episodes, but episode 169 was evolutionary model merge with Sakana and Sakana AI's LLM solution. So like Andy said, this was huge. I was amazed by the release of this model and this paper and whatnot, because for me, it was one of those key stepping stones or milestones that you need for true adaptation or true evolution of an AI. So which speaks to the next example. So with Sakana, the models that get merged create a new child model that has the best qualities of what you're trying to build up. For our younger fans, Pokemon. Just think Pokemon evolutions. That's all you need. All right, and then this. I saw this episode as a great stepping stone or foundational piece to what we talked about in my next example, and that's the 200 plus range, and that was breaking down Leopold Aschenbrenner's situational awareness paper, which I know for a lot of us had a great deal of impact. And for me, it was great to see someone who was, who was really smart, highly educated, had all the chops, and lay out things that similar thoughts to I had. But he really did open up the field on what explosive growth or exponential growth would be in for AI, what we're going to see in just explosive increase in intelligence, creating a new measurement system because of how fast and how large things grow, right? So you can't just talk about necessarily just flops and computational things that we've been working on so far. You have to go orders of magnitude and things like that. So it's a very, while concise for an in-depth research paper, it was full of really dense material. And I think we're still seeing connections being built out or being revealed from when we covered that paper. And Sakana is one of those pieces which I think will definitely lead to some of the outcomes that he's talking about. And he didn't mention it specifically, but when you can see AI models have the ability to evolve into greater versions of themselves or highlight certain the best qualities, and then you can see how once you reach a certain intelligence, you can help design the next version, and just this compound growth from there. So of the three eras, I'd say those are the ones that stood out the most for me.
Let me comment on that. Let me comment on the evolutionary thing just very quickly. We had another show where we talked about Max Tegmark and the emergence of artificial general intelligence and the explosion that happens when AI can redesign itself. Well, what if it's not redesigning itself, but instead it's just evaluating other models out there and then courting that model and saying, let's have a child. Give me your weights and I'll give you mine and we'll see what we get. And then release that AI into the wild. That one, that emergence of superintelligence is an evolutionary example rather than an iterative, recursive self-design model. Interesting.
I just want to
really quick.
Be honest.
I really want to take 1 quick second before the rest of you hop in here, but I want to thank Jen. Thank you for the super sticker thing. That's the first time I've ever experienced that. I super appreciate it. It's awesome. Okay, sorry. That I just wanted to say thank you. Go ahead.
I want to hear from everybody else too. The only thing I wanted to just add into what you were saying, Jimmy, is I didn't have time because of traveling, obviously back from Europe, to isolate shows, specific shows. But I think you and Andy already have both sort of said what I would say. Not those particular shows. My favorite parts of this show are exactly what you just said, which is the conversations. When the conversations just go in directions that maybe we didn't think. There's so many shows that I can think of just generally where I thought it would go one way. I mean, because I did my research and truthfully, if I was a show of one, that's the way the show would have gone. Just wherever my brain would have gone. And there's been so many times where somebody else on the show has said, well, what about this? Or what about that? And it's forced me to see a different perspective. Not that I was against it, but just it forces a different way of looking. We're bending around corners. We're looking at different angles to the point of any of the people like Leopold or whatever. 99% of these names I'd never heard of before this show. I'll be the first to say I was not well-versed in AI. I still don't know that I'm well-versed in AI. This show, the point of this show was to get there and to take a journey along with our audience to go along with us. And so what this show has enabled us to do is read papers like Leopold and go, oh my goodness, that really hits me in a different, deep way. I can't wait to have a conversation about this and see what everybody else says. And sometimes not everybody else is excited about me. Sometimes people are way more excited about a topic than I am. But the best part of this show, as I reflect back on the 1 year, is that we have picked topics that we collectively have thought were going to be exciting, and we've dug in. And sometimes they don't materialize to an amazing conversation, and other times, to your point, Jyunmi, they do. And they're fun, and it's exciting, and it's the best part about this show is that we're not trying to chase like the best next, headline. We do our news and we try to keep up and we talk about relevant things, obviously, but it really is just a group of people who are coming together day in and day out or week in and week out and saying, this interests me. Can we talk about it? And I think that's the most fun for me. And as our audience grows, which it's clearly growing in all the different ways that I couldn't have predicted, that's the most fun, is that everybody gets to come along on the journey with us, to learn with us, to grow with us, to suggest topics themselves, as we've already seen, and we've brought those topics up and made them shows. So it's like we got this whole community, and honestly, I could not have predicted 1 year in that we would be where we are. So it's really, really fun to me to see where this is going and to know how much fun it's been for 1 year, and then to say, what does years 2, 3, 4 look like, beyond there. So just wanted to say that, and that's a testament to all of you guys, all of our crew here, and bringing up the interesting topics, and then being open and willing to have great conversations and see where they go publicly. And by the way, last thing I'll say is, it's not missed on me that we are all creating our own data in our own meta ways of all of our voices and the written word. We're not writing letters, Jyunmi, but every single day, in most cases, we're getting on and talking, and this is becoming the data of potentially our future avatars. So that's not lost on me either.
Awesome. All right. So Eran said that he has something next. I just want to highlight, as we move toward that, 2 things. One, keep watching. We'll have some ideas about other ways that you can engage with us in your learning journey, because we're getting enormous value out of this, and we want to make sure that you have the opportunities to get enormous value as well. And the second is, Sakana is a great example of why we're different. That was a blip on X. I do not hear anyone else talking about it, but because it was a conversation for us as we look at AI developing forward, and because you're in our bubble, it's now part of your zeitgeist as well. And I think that's really part of the gift of being a part of this. Thank you. Eran, what have you got for us?
Okay, so before I touch on probably 4 episodes that kind of stood out for me, I do have to mention, and I think Andy already said them, but I just want to reiterate that the whole Sam Altman saga and the big Microsoft, big Google event that was on recently, and the OpenAI launch thing, which we did discuss, I found them fascinating. I mean, I've never sat down and watched one of those hour-long presentations before, but it was really interesting to watch. As a marketer, as amongst other things, just to see how they've got it all nice and slick and professional, that kind of stuff. But it was very, I guess, exciting to see some of the things that are going to come eventually. In terms of shows, the 4 that I highlighted, and these weren't in any particular order of preference. Episode 50, we talked about AI music, which is not something I'd really looked into before, and I thought that was really fascinating. I had a bit of a play around with one of the tools, and it was like, wow, I can't believe it. I mean, I think I made a stupid song out of it, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. So that was something different. Definitely zero musical talent in myself, so cool to think that there's an option there that might do something there for people. The other one I enjoyed was episode 69, where we talked about what we would do with AI on a budget. So we had a $100 budget, and we all had to talk about what we would spend that $100 on. And it was a great episode. I really enjoyed that. We all had some similarities, and we all had some really big differences. Next one was 82, which was, I think it might have been me who suggested this one actually, but AI stealing from real artists. I think that came out of a conversation I was involved in on social media about people claiming that Midjourney is stealing real artists and putting them out of work and yada, yada, yada. So that was a fascinating episode. And then episode 160, where we did a review of Descript or Descript.com. I enjoyed that one. I had to do more of that because I'm sort of the video guy, as it were. And then other than that, I haven't had an opportunity to be that involved this year, unfortunately, for time zone reasons more than anything else. But one thing I will say that you, as the audience out there, don't get to see is the after-show conversations. And we often have some really good conversations that go for 30 minutes or an hour after the show just on our live stream platform, but it's obviously not streaming out to the world. And that's been a really great opportunity just to shoot the breeze and talk about different things and get to know each other. And that for me, that's been perhaps one of the most memorable aspects of the show, even though the general public doesn't get to see it. So That's me.
Thanks. That's amazing. I also, I feel like we should revisit that $100 show because like I am confession spending way more than $100 at this point, but also using different tools than I was then. Thanks so much, Karl. You have not said much. Do you have moments or shows that stand out to you?
You know what? Not really. Mostly it's because I honestly just hang out here just because I love talking about this stuff. So there is no show that really stands out. There's like, for me, it's more of, I kind of, for what we do together, it's like hanging out with a group of friends every morning, be like, okay, let's have a discussion on AI. If we have the deep dive, we deep dive. If we don't, it's just neat to have a subject where things change every day, that there's something that we can have a discussion about that have such a big impact on everybody, from people to society to humanity to business to economy, whatever it is. We can always have something to chat about because things are moving so fast. Because if you think about it, imagine if we had to do a show about, I don't know, whatever other technology out there, like cloud computing, we'd be done within, I don't know, a month, 2 months, maybe 3 months. Apologies to all those cloud computing out there who I'm sure have things to talk about every day, but you don't have the drama that, we see. You don't have people making assumptions about the craziest 1 sentence or 3-word tweet that, or post that somebody in higher up in AI, in an AI company. So for me, it's just that, being with so many really awesome people who are diverse in their views and where they're coming from. And I think also the ability for us to kind of piece together, because I think we are part of the pioneer crew that is, hey, it's not just this technology or this technology. Like Eran was talking about, we talked about music, we talked about agents, we talked about research papers. But I think we can all start piecing together what all these things mean for everybody. So as we start talking and we go back into all the subjects that we had a discussion about, it's just really neat to see all the pieces starting to put together where potentially what our future looks like, what the next generation's future looks like, which is very, very going to be very, very different. And it's just kind of neat to be part of that change and that disruption that's happening. That's really it.
Yeah,
Absolutely. The idea came together. Many of you have heard us tell the story before, but the idea came together in part because we were talking, we were a group of people who were talking, meeting on Zoom and having these kinds of conversations around chatbots, which at that time were a new, like, what is this? That's amazing. An intelligent chatbot. And we had such great value from that and also really enjoyed talking to each other. So, and that's how we became the Daily AI Show, right? I'm hearing the Brady Bunch theme in my head now. And now maybe all of you are as well.
Let me add that my recollection is that it was out of what you described, these conversations in the AI exchange, but it was Brian who put out the call saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing a podcast. Is anybody interested? And this was the crew that responded. And so thank you, Brian, for having the initiating concept of the Daily AI Show.
Well, I appreciate it, Andy. I've mentioned this before, but I'll say it again because I know we have new viewers all the time. That's really it. There's nothing more fancy than that, other than we were all in the in the AI Exchange Slack community. It was literally a post. I kind of wish I had access to it so I can remember. I don't remember, to be perfectly honest, if even more than the 7 of us, the 6 of y'all, initially responded. If there was a larger group and it whittled down pretty quickly or what the case is, we certainly didn't exclude anybody. I think I was just happy that anybody took me seriously. And I've said this before. I have watched in other industries where truly people just got on the bandwagon early, I guess, if you want, or they decided to just not wait and just start talking about it and say, well, we'll figure it out as we go, as opposed to trying to create something perfect and then mass producing it. And so to the ire of Jyunmi probably sometimes, my take on all this, and we've pretty much stayed this way, was this is a morning show on the radio. That's it. This is a live morning show on the radio that's in podcast form, and it's on YouTube and it's video and stuff like that. But it truly is just that. I think about this as turning on the morning show and saying, hey, here we are, and here's who's here today, and here some people are and some people not, and that's totally okay. We don't need to have all 7 of us all the time. It's not the way it works. Sometimes 3-person conversations are amazing. Sometimes all 7 of us are there. And that was really it. And the other idea of it, the other sticking point for me was it had to be daily. It had to be like 5 days a week, weekdays. And I really think that has served us well, because it really allows us to talk about, instead of just having to condense everything into some like one hour or 2 hour a week, where we really would miss the really fun small chats that turn into really big things. We've already mentioned some of them on this call. Sometimes we can just spend 45 minutes talking about a really, really like tiny throwaway idea that if you were doing it once a week or whatever, you just simply would not have the time to do. And I love that about the show, is that we can spend the time to do that, because that's the way the show is turned up. And it doesn't have to be a home run every single day, because we're going to be back tomorrow and we're going to do our best to have another great conversation. And, the only thing I'll say is I just want to give credit as well to Karl, because Karl really set I'm a big part about setting the expectations. I talk about that a lot in my life. I talk about that a lot when I do teach, when I used to have the CrossFit gym at other places. It really always was about setting the tone and the expectations of the class. That to me was how you had a great class. And Karl, early on had said, I think we'll know what this show is about the 3-year mark, or something. I'm paraphrasing. And I always bring that back up because I think that was so important to take the pressure off of us as a group of new people who didn't know each other, to say we have to somehow have this figured out. And the reality is today is the 1-year anniversary in episode 263. And I don't know that we exactly do know what the show is. We just know that we'll keep showing up day in and day out, having great conversations, and the rest will take care of itself. So kudos to everybody and all the great conversations and stuff. And kudos to our growing audience who has just made this even more rich, even more fulfilling in the conversations. And thank you to everybody that shows up on a day-to-day basis, because you guys make this so much fun on top of what we're already doing.
One thing I want to say quickly is, and you briefly mentioned, is I guess a shout out to Rachel from the AI Exchange, because she basically brought us all together. And I still see her as a bit of a trendsetter in the space, and she's going on to bigger and better things. But yeah, without her, I don't think any of us would have ever met. So, in a way, 100%. She was kind of the mother of this show.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's the gift that keeps on giving, because if you were with us on Monday, that was inspired by a tweet that Rachel posted about not getting wrapped up into perfection and being able to identify your minimum viable prompt, right? So like your good enough prompt. Okay, Jyunmi.
Well, I was just I wanted to give a little bit of, I guess, a little bit of behind the scenes for everybody. And I just, in looking up those episodes, and of course, it's been 1 year. It's time. It's okay if we Google ourselves. So I asked Perplexity.
Yes, we Perplexity ourselves.
So I asked Perplexity, what does everybody think of the Daily AI Show? And
oh no.
So it had some great insight. It commented on people liked our expertise and knowledge. People liked how we create engaging and dynamic discussions. There was a term used like it was daily updates and no fluff. And then I looked at the source material. It's all of our platforms. Right. So I did look at this. I looked at these podcast platforms that like analyze various shows and things like that. And some of our very early shows, like 8 months ago, I take this with a grain of salt, saying there was some audio issues and there was too many people, and I was just like, yeah. Obviously, I hope we've improved since then. Maybe Justin and Jude and Jen can and Cisco can let us know if that's improved over the weeks and months that they've been following us. But a great takeaway I found was this one podcast monitoring service or whatnot let us know about certain rankings, and apparently we're huge in New Zealand. We are 140. And now that doesn't seem like a big number, but remember, we're talking about hundreds of possible podcasts, maybe even thousands. Well, we're 140 in New Zealand, and we're just behind some big names like Lex Friedman and, what's the other? All In. I mean, they're 1 and 2, but we're just behind them. But so I wanted to highlight that. So thank you everybody who's been watching us and everybody who's and everyone who shows up in the chat consistently. Thank you so much. But I did also want to take this real quick time to announce we have finally released the first episode of the Sci-Fi AI show.
Yeah,
So,
finally.
I know we talked about it a couple months ago, but we of course ran into production delays and other things like that. It's all my fault, really. But so that's been released. It's got its own channel, but it's also shared on the growing DAS network. So if you check out our YouTube channel, you can find the Sci-Fi AI show. First episode is about the universal translator. So if you don't know anything about the show, it's basically with all these advancements in AI, we are starting to see the foundations of what these sci-fi style technologies and devices that were always dreamed up in fiction are coming to fruition. And the first one we cover is the universal translator from Star Trek.
Are you going to talk about the holodeck at some point?
Yes. And to answer Brian's question, yes, we are talking about the holodeck. There's so many things that are part of that. Our general idea is that we are watching science fiction become science fact, like literally in front of our eyes. And all of us are having holy crap moments. All of us who have paid any attention to sci-fi at all are like, oh, wow, that was something I read about 20 years ago or 40 years ago or whenever it was written, that kind of stuff. So we have these episodes like the first episode that's coming out, which is sort of a panel discussion of visual essay of what we're thinking. There'll also be some interviews with people who are science fiction fans, scientists who are also science fiction fans, and AI professionals who are also seeing that. Because so it's what Ethan Mollick talked about, that 3 a.m., like awake at 3 a.m., sleepless night. It's that same kind of piece as we step back and we look at what is actually happening and have an opportunity to take that in. And those are the conversations we'll be having as well. So thank you so much for sharing this celebration with us. I'm going to wrap it up here. What I would like to say is that we could not do this without you, right? I mean, we're having fun, but we are also really interested in contributing to what is happening around AI and helping people really grok it and understand it and be able to do that in a way that is informative and deep diving and hopefully slightly entertaining and limiting the amount of anxiety that you have about it. You can find more about us at thedailyAIshow.com. We have a newsletter that comes out on Sundays. Some of this back conversation that we're talking about is shared in that. We also have, this is Wednesday, we'll be talking about the news tomorrow because we bumped our news show for that. And then Friday, we are talking about, is training your own custom LLM too big a risk right now? And I don't know what everyone will say with that. We'll see. That's going to be one of those shows where yeah, that's a show topic. Who wants to put a stake in the ground, and we'll discuss that. All right. Any final things from anybody else?
Nope. I'll just say thank you to everybody.
Thanks so much.
Aloha.